Evening, everyone, and welcome to the Lawndale City Council meeting. I'm going to ask the city clerk to give us the roll call.
Good evening, everyone. Mayor Pro Tem Kearney,
Here.
Councilmember Suarez,
Here.
Councilmember Hoffman-Gorman,
Here.
Councilmember Cuevas,
Here.
Mayor Pullen Miles.
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you, Madam. The next item, I'm going to ask Mr. Mayor Pro Tem Pat Kearney to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay, if you don't have a flag handy, close your eyes and envision one blowing in your mind. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. March the 1st. Today, we're going to proclaim March the 1st as COVID-19 Victims and Survivors Memorial Day, remembering those who have passed away from COVID-19, as well as those who have survived this terrible pandemic. With that, I'm going to ask for the reading of the proclamation.
City of Lawndale Proclamation, COVID-19 Victims and Survivors Memorial Day, March 1st, 2021. Whereas the first Monday in March has been designated as COVID-19 Victims and Survivors Memorial Day, and whereas COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2, is an illness caused by a virus that can transmit from person to person and has spread across the world, creating a global pandemic that is having catastrophic effects on human life, our community, and our economy. And whereas to mitigate the spread of COVID-19, observance of public health orders on social distance and stay at home have created challenges for small businesses, workers, and schools, which are working to comply with limited resources. And whereas school districts, teachers, students, and parents are grappling with the challenges of distance learning and working to prevent any potential learning loss due to not being in person. And whereas in the absence of adequate federal guidance, local and state governments, health departments, and public servants have taken bold actions to protect residents, support struggling local economies, and find innovative ways to provide services. And whereas in response to rapid spread of COVID-19 and stay-at-home orders, essential workers have stepped up to provide critical services to help protect our communities and save lives, sacrificing their own health and safety. And whereas COVID-19 has had a disproportionate impact on low-income communities and communities of color, exacerbating inequities already prevalent in our systems that we must address as a nation. And whereas the symptoms and severity of COVID-19 can vary dramatically by individual and the long-term health implications for survivors is largely unknown, as many survivors suffer with lingering side effects of the disease long after they no longer test positive. And whereas each life lost to COVID-19 mattered and leaves a hole in the hearts of loved ones, family members, and surrounding communities. And whereas public health guidelines and policies targeted at prevention, such as social distancing, wearing masks in public, and staying home help mitigate the spread of COVID-19, prevent illness, and lessen the burden on individuals and society. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Lawndale, California, does hereby join the United States Conference of Mayors in proclaiming the first Monday in March as COVID-19 Memorial Day, in remembrance of those who have lost their lives, in honor of those who continue to suffer from the impact of this virus, and to commemorate them in an appropriate manner each year on that day. and urges everyone to continue taking preventative measures such as social distancing and following public health orders to mitigate the spread of this virus, in tribute to essential workers and those who rose in service to protect the public. Proclaimed this day, the 1st of March, 2021.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk, for the reading of the proclamation. Now I'm going to ask everyone to join me in a moment of silence as we honor the victims of COVID-19, while we also remember the survivors and also their families. Please join me. Thank you. And with that, we proclaim March 1st, 2021 as COVID-19 Victims and Survivors Memorial Day. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is our public safety report. Let's hear from our captain, Captain Allen.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm here tonight to present the public safety report for January 19th through January 30th. Excuse my dates. February 19th through March 1st. In regards to crime, the city's overall crime rate continues to trend downward. We continue to see a decrease in burglaries, which are down 18%, and robberies, which are down 54%. Grand theft autos are also trending downward from an all-time highs last year. We still see an increase in larceny thefts over last year's numbers, which is mostly driven by petty thefts from liquor stores and gas stations. My biggest concern so far this year is the slight increase we still have in assaults. This is mostly due to an increase in domestic violence. Los Angeles countywide has seen an increase in spousal assaults since the pandemic. If you want help and need to speak to someone, you can call the Los Angeles County Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-978-3600. That's 1-800-978-3600. As always, if the concern is emergent or ongoing, you should call your local law enforcement via the business line or 911. I do want to address a concern that was brought to my attention by our local citizens. The concern was a lack of visibility by deputies as they drive through the city. I can assure everyone that when deputies are not answering calls, enforcing traffic violations, or making arrests, they are patrolling the city in a very efficient manner. Last, I want to continue to thank the citizens of Lawndale who continue to call in suspicious activities or crimes in progress. Your help is deeply appreciated. This concludes my report, and I'd be happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Thank you, Captain Allen. Are there any questions of the captain's report? Hearing none, I want to thank you, Captain Allen, you and your deputies for protecting our communities and doing a fine job. And we thank you for your service to our community.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Next item on our agenda is oral communications. Have we received any written or oral communications?
Yes, we have one.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. From Randall Abram, Lawndale resident. As I stated last month, the Lawndale Municipal Code requires that 30% of the members of each community-based group must reside within the city. In the youth-based groups, at least 30 of the youth members in each organization must reside within the city. Do all of the youth groups approved have 30 youth members residing in Lawndale? Under public records requests, I was provided applications for this year's booths. C, each application shall include all of the following. 3, the purpose for which the applicant is primarily existing and for which it was organized. Proof is required from the state of California of nonprofit status. 7, declarations shall be submitted by the applicant stating under penalty of perjury that C, the required numbers of members of the organization reside within or are employed within the city as required in section 8.12.040A3 of this chapter. In reviewing the applications for this year's booths, there was no required proof submitted of the state of California nonprofit status from any of the organizations. One of the churches that was approved failed to submit the fireworks application official declaration page, which clearly says on the form that failure to submit would disqualify the entity from being approved for a booth. These applications should be monitored to ensure compliance with the Lawndale Municipal Code. Lawndale Municipal Code 8.12.040 requires, quote, verification that the organization meets these membership requirements shall be demonstrated through the submission of a list of names and addresses and, in the case of youth-based organizations, a statement of the age of each member of the organization. Should the city receive a public record request for this information, the city shall redact all private information to the extent authorized by law. A minimum of 30% of the membership of a community-based organization making the application for a fireworks permit must reside within or be employed within the city, and in the case of a youth-based organization, at least 30 of the youth members of such organization must reside within the city at the time of the filing of the application for a permit, end quote. Where is this required documentation? As it is not with any of the applications, none of the applicants has conformed with the municipal code, and the city has been negligent in not requiring this information. This is a program with minimal benefits to most of its residents, as only 25% of the proceeds are required to benefit the city groups in any way, while 100% of the manufacturer's proceeds support their profits. 32,000 residents are adversely impacted by fireworks within the city, required to expend funds for enforcement. The least the city council can do is enforce the ordinances as a stand in regulating the applications for the booths. And that is the end of the public.
Okay, thank you for reading the public comments. I'm going to ask if there are anyone want to have a response to or communication on the comments from council. Any comments?
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
this is Councilwoman Shirley Cuevas. I would like to thank Randall for bringing that to our attention, and I would like to ask Kevin if he could make sure that all nonprofit organizations provide the required documentation.
Yes, Councilmember Cuevas, this is Kevin Chun. We can certainly do that, and I will work with our finance department, who is administrating this program, to see what information was received as part of the applications. My understanding is that the organizations that applied for the booths are long-term community organizations that have provide service in the community. They've done so for many years, and they've also been applicants and have run booths, fireworks booths within the city for many years as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, I was going to add that as well, just to make sure that these organizations are properly vetted, trust that they are. And you are correct, those recipients have been long participants of the program, and they have 501c3s, at least in the past, but it is worthy of underscoring to make sure that all the organizations are still in compliance with their 501. You know, got to make sure that happens. Okay, thank you for that oral communications. With that, we will close oral communications and comments from the council, and we will proceed with our agenda. We are now on item G, which is the consent calendar. What is the pleasure of this body concerning the calendar?
Mayor, this is Pro Tem Kearney. I'll make a motion to accept the consent calendar as written.
Okay, Pro Tem Kearney has made a motion that we accept the calendar.
Councilwoman Shirley Cuevas will second that.
Seconded by Councilwoman Cuevas. Is there any discussion on the motion? Would the clerk please conduct the vote?
For the consent calendar, Mayor Pro Tem Kearney,
Yes.
Councilmember Suarez,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman-Gorman,
Yes.
Councilmember Cuevas,
Yes.
Mayor Poland Miles.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, ma'am. We're now on item 10 under administration. The appointment of the mayors, members of the Parks, Recreation, and Social Services Commission. At this time, I would like to appoint and ask to ratify the appointments of the following to the Park, Recreation, and Social Services Commission. Daniel Wood. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
I saw Daniel Woods, Christine Carroll, Dan Reed, Jessica Martinez, and David Glass. I'll make a motion to ratify these applicants for Park and Rec and Social Services Commission.
Okay, thank you, sir. So the motion's been made to ratify the mayor's appointment of the 5 individuals rated. There any discussion?
Councilwoman Shirley Cuevas will second that.
Seconded by Councilwoman. So any on the motion? Here now I'm going to ask the vote of item 10.
Okay, for item 10, Mayor Pro Tem Kearney,
Yes.
Councilmember Suarez,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman-Gorman,
Yes.
Councilmember Cuevas,
Yes.
Mayor Poland Miles.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, council, for their ratification. The next appointment is item 11, appointments to the Lawndale Planning Commission. Council to ratify the appointment of 5 already individuals: Johnny Martinez, Nicole Price, Scott Smith, Eric Escamilla, and Madonna Sitka.
Mayor, this is Pro Tem Kearney again. I'll ratify your nominations.
Okay,
This is Councilmember Suarez. I'll second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Suarez. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the city clerk to get the vote on item 11.
Okay, for item 11, Mayor Pro Tem Kearney,
Yes, but I'd like to add, it's sad to not see Ufi Muller's name on this. He's been on there forever. He's part of the fixtures of the Planning Commission. But anyway, yeah, yes on it.
Councilmember Suarez,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman-Gorman,
Yes.
Councilmember Cuevas,
Yes.
Mayor Poland Miles.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, madam. Next item, the appointment as well, item 12, Southern California Association of Government and the Annual General Assembly for appointment of the voting delegates and the alternates for the May 6, 2020. So this is something we do every year where we have to designate delegate, those who want to attend. I would imagine it's going to be virtually this year. SCAG conference, but virtually at 11 o'clock.
Mayor, this is Mayor Pro Tem Kearney. Who is our delegate right now? Who's our member on the SCAG right now? Do we know?
Well, who's the last? Well,
It used to be Jim.
Even if you're the member of the SCAG, that does not necessarily mean you are the delegate.
No.
The delegate is appointed just for this particular conference.
Right.
The delegate in the office. But I'm not certain who is the regular and come right off. But they would have to be appointed to the delegate. Sure.
Okay, true.
But anyway,
This is
opportunity for a delegate and an alternate.
Alternate.
I'd be interested. This is Councilman Suarez. I did attend last year, and if no one else is, I'd be interested in attending that.
So let's push. Anyone else interested?
I'll be the alternate.
Okay, I heard two voices.
No, I was gonna say I could be the alternate, but Pat
You
could
go,
take
Shirley.
it. No, you can take it.
Okay, so it sounds like we'll put Suarez as the delegate and Kearney as the alternate. without objections, that would be the order. I think we can take this one under unanimous consent. Yeah. So that would be the order without objection. Suarez is the delegate and Attorney as the 2001 council. Okay, with that, that brings us up to item number 13. Let's have the staff report.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. This is Mike Estes, Director of Community Services, and we're here to talk about cancellation of city special event programs for March and April 2021. The Center for Disease Control, or the CDC, the State Department of Public Health, and LA County Department of Public Health still prohibits large-scale public gatherings with lots of people, even though they're outdoors. So, we're at the point right now where we have to cancel March and April events for 2021. Although unfortunate, we're all hoping that 2021 is going to be a better year, and I think it is going to be. But the 4 events that we're actually talking about cancellation of 3 events. Youth and Government Day, which typically takes place in late March or early April. The Easter Egg Hunt, which is usually the Saturday prior to Easter Sunday. Youth Day Parade, which is typically held on the last Saturday in April. Staff is recommending cancellation of those 3 events, and then a modification similar to last year's Spring Cleanup Week event, where we held curbside pickup for bulky item and large items, but none of the other events, such as cleanup day and drop-offs at the city yard, to avoid contact between the public and city staff. Staff recommends that the City Council approve the cancellation of the following events that typically take place in March or April of each year: Youth and Government Day, Easter Egg Hunt, Youth Day Parade. In addition, staff recommends that the City Council approve modifications to the annual Spring Cleanup Week program, similar to the 2020 Spring Cleanup Week event. That concludes my report, and staff is available for questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that report. Are there any discussion on this item, the cancellation of?
I have a question for Mike.
Yeah.
Mike, since we're canceling the cleanup, the street cleanup that we used to do, would it be possible to maybe do it once the ordinance is lifted, like May or June, have a street cleanup?
I'm sure that could be part of the discussion. I can probably encourage the person that organizes that event, Director of Municipal Services, Michael Reyes. We do have a fall cleanup week upcoming in September, but I think that would be Michael's place to comment on that.
Good evening, Shirley. This is Michael. Just mirroring what Mike said, we do have a second. This event is twice yearly, so we could certainly do a summertime cleanup, and then again in September for the second, for the fall cleanup. We can certainly have the discussion. Beautification Committee plays a big role in that, and they certainly be open to something like that. So at our next meeting, I can certainly bring that up to them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to make a motion to cancel the city special event programs for March and April of 2021.
Mayor, this is Pro Tem Kearney. I have a question before we go forward. The money we usually spend on these programs, where is it being directed to? Is it general fund? Is it bond? Is it grant, or what?
I think it'd be appropriate for Director of Finance, Marla Pendleton, to address that question.
Yes, thank you. This is Marla Pendleton, Director of Finance. The programs were budgeted in the Community Services Department. As you know, that department has, it's funded by user fees for events, or at least classes, and then the rest comes from the general fund. So since we do not have the revenue coming in, what this will actually be is a savings to the general fund. Not as much money will need to be transferred over to community services to fund these programs for the year. So that will just go back into the general fund.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And with that, I'll second Rhonda's motion.
Okay, so there's been a motion by Councilwoman Hoffman-Gorman and a second by Pro Tem Kearney. Is there any discussion or debate on the motion? Okay, not directly debating the motion. I want to encourage the staff to see if there's any opportunities to do something virtual. I know we're canceling these because, COVID-19, but if there are some, it's been a whole year or so past, and there's probably a lot of creative things that we can do as a community to bring people together in terms of recreation or social events or what have you. Be a new frontier for us, but I think that's something we should at least entertain looking at to see if there's any possibilities of putting on some type of virtual event, for the community. That's food for thought on that item before we. With that,
I concur with you, Robert.
Thank you. Is there any further discussions on the motion? If not, I'm going to ask the city clerk to conduct the vote on item 14.
Item 13.
I'm sorry,
14.
Okay.
It was a test.
Yeah. Did I pass?
Yeah, you did.
Thank you. Okay. Item 13, Mayor Pro Tem Kearney.
Yes.
Councilmember Suarez.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman-Gorman.
Yes.
Councilmember Cuevas.
Yes.
Mayor Pullen Miles.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, madam. Now we're on item 14, the quarterly budget update.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pullen Miles, council members. This is Marla Pendleton, Finance Director. What we have before you today is our mid-year budget update. Several things that we keyed in on. Within the general fund, our budget basically is looking really well. We're looking at revenue increases from what we budgeted. Specifically, I'm asking for budget adjustments or recommending things that are $100,000 or more from the budget. So property taxes are increasing. The main reason for that is property sales are going up, which means the tax base is going up, and the property tax related to that coming to the city. We're looking at $442,000 coming to the general fund for that. Our transit occupancy tax for our hotels, we didn't anticipate receiving TOT from 2 of our hotels that were not operating to the public. And those 2 hotels since then had got approval to receive and pay TOT. And as a result of that, we're looking at an additional $528,000 coming to the general fund. Our utility user taxes, which are based on utilities, are seeing an increase from last year, and that's a $150,000 increase. We're seeing some decreases in our sales tax and our Measure L tax of $200,000 and $130,000 for a net overall increase to the general fund for those specific items of $790,000. In addition to that, we're pretty much on target with our expenditures. There are a few areas in the general fund that we are recommending that we adjust the budget for. Specifically, we're looking at an increase in revenue or savings, not revenue, in expenditures for our sheriff department. That being because our liability insurance that we were quoted at the beginning of the budget time last year was 11.5%. The actual amount that was passed and we're being charged is 11% on the contract cost. That, in addition to other savings with money going from the general fund over to our CARES Act funding grant. Some of the funding was absorbed there instead of the general fund. And then one officer that was down for a short time, we did have savings in that position. So that is going to give us a savings in our expenditures of $190,000 to the general fund. That being said, there's a few areas that looks like we need to increase, and we are requesting appropriation increases for those. Based on our current expenditures for our legal services, we're looking at $160,000 increase over budget. We're looking at contract services and our admin services for $40,000, and then our PARS contributions for our retirees, $32,000. So that would be a net impact, an increase of $42,000 on the budget, which our additional revenue should be able to easily absorb that. In addition to that, we have some budget cleanup relating to our grant funding. We adjusted the appropriations last budget, but we didn't bring our revenue in a line. So we've got just a cleanup entry in some of our grant funding. And then our community development department, they had lost somebody in their department. They were backfilled on doing their billing from the deposits that had been collected. Since then, they have caught up with all of their deposit-based billing. They've refunded deposits as well as determined how much should be revenue to date. As a result of that, an additional $440,000, and that's over multiple years, will be recognized in the current year as revenue. So that's not ongoing budget, but it is the current year that we're recommending adjusting the revenue in the community development department for that. So that concludes my my report. What I want to do is file this, and I am recommending that council look at the budget adjustments and approve those. Thank you.
Thank you for the report. So at this point, you want us to receive and file this, but at the same time approve the budget adjustment.
Correct.
Are there any other questions by the council? Okay, I don't hear any questions. I do have one question. It's actually an observation. It's probably not appropriate for action at this point, but I want us to take a look at, I know there were, when we had to do budget cuts last year, there was, I think, at least 5 personnel that we had to cut, mainly code enforcement. I think there was maybe work. I'm asking that we at least look at bringing in code enforcement, the code enforcement, and I think it was like one public works, one person back to see if our budget can absorb installing those positions. I noticed on the public works end that there's a marked increase of graffiti taking a long time to be abated. I'm told that that funding for graffiti comes out of, well, it's as a result, I should say, as a result of the budget cuts, is why that personnel graffiti on the is no longer available, and that's probably why we're seeing graffiti stay up longer. So I want us to at least take a look at that and see if I or bring in some of these folks back.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it's Kevin Chun, City Manager. As part of the upcoming budget process, we will take a look at all departments and their operations to see, what our needs are in each one of those departments, and also, looking at what our budget situation is, how much money we could, how much money we will have to make adjustments to our operations. So again, with the proposed budget coming up, we'll have recommendations for that potential for possibly adding more staff back to our roster of staff. So yes, we'll definitely look at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or concerns from the council?
With none being said, this is Mayor Pro Tem Kearney. I'll make a motion to receive and file and recommend the changes in the budget, adjustments in the budget.
Okay. So
I'll second that.
motion's been made by Kearney, second by Cuevas, that we receive and file and include the budget adjustments as well as the appropriation. That I'm going to ask the city clerk to give the roll call.
Okay, item
Keep saying the
number
roll call, but I mean the vote.
item number 14. Mayor Pro Tem Kearney,
Yes.
Councilmember Suarez,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman-Gorman,
Yes.
Councilmember Cuevas,
Yes.
Mayor Poland Miles.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Next item is item I, City Manager's Report. Let's hear from City Manager.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. Thank you. As you know, this past week, Metro conducted 2 scoping meetings related to the Green Line expansion project. And those meetings were conducted for the purpose of collecting public input related to the upcoming environmental impact report that Metro is preparing for the project. Those meetings were held on February 24th and also on February 27th. As we know that this project is extremely important to the City Council and to the community, we wanted to make sure that, in addition to whatever efforts Metro made to get word out regarding those meetings, that we also did that as well. So we did put out information on those meetings through the city's social media platforms, as well as on our city website and cable TV channel. Moving forward, again, because this is such an important project for us, we will be working with Metro to get a better understanding of their public outreach campaign, just to understand what it is that they were doing. And we will do what we can to support that, to help get as much information out to the public as possible. Because again, receiving that input from our residents is vital. It'll help Metro understand how our residents are feeling about the project, what potential design features they would like to see or not see, what mitigation measures they would like to see, et cetera. So we want to help facilitate that process with Metro. So we will be working with them very closely, hopefully in the next several months to come. And I would invite any council member, if you have any thoughts regarding this as well, to let us know, and we'll try to make sure that Metro understands your thoughts as well. So with that, that concludes my report for the evening, and I'll be happy to take any questions from you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager, for that report. Let's hear from the council. Let's start with Council. Anything you want to share?
No comments regarding that.
Okay. So that's your.
Are we on item 15?
Yeah, we're on.
Oh, the report. Okay, here. My report. Okay. I had a busy 2 weeks of webinars. My first webinar was with the California Contract Cities Association Board of Directors. That was on February 17th. The 25th was my busiest day. I had a morning event with the League of California Cities, Effective Communication in a Virtual World. Then I attended the City Budget Committee meeting And I also was on a webinar with the South Bay Workforce Investment Special Orientation.
Very good. Ma'am. Councilwoman Suarez.
Hi, so I did have a couple, and I also do have some comments regarding the scoping meeting that was held. So I'll start with, I did attend last week the Board of Directors South Bay City Council of Governments meeting. A lot of updates. There was no reportable action. And then I did attend this past Saturday the Metro Green Line, or otherwise known as C Line, scoping meeting. And I do know that Rhonda had mentioned to me she has a few questions, so I'll let her take some of those. But there is a question that I had. I don't know if it's appropriate to speak now regarding it, since it's technically not an item on the agenda. However, the deadline's coming up on the 15th, so that's why I wanted to make sure to bring this question up. So I don't know. I'm wondering if our city attorney can respond if it's okay for me to ask questions that would technically be directed towards Metro.
Sure. Mr. Mayor, this is Greg Murphy, council member. I believe it's perfectly fine for you to ask questions. Questions come onto the record. If I believe that the answer will violate the Brown Act by giving information to the whole council, I'll ask that the answer be made privately or be otherwise given to you. But certainly please ask the questions so that whatever we can give you, we will. And what we can't give you tonight, we're going to get to you in another form as soon as possible.
Okay, perfect. It's more of a general question and possibly some direction that we may want to look into. And so I did attend on Saturday, and there were various questions that came up. And a lot of people were questioning with regards to how they're conducting the outreach, which is something that our city manager brought up. And it's an important question, especially for our city, because looking at our demographics, we're a city that, based off of the numbers that we're seeing, has been heavily impacted by the pandemic. And so I'm wondering, and someone else brought up something that kind of triggered in my mind I'm wondering if there's an environmental justice component to this whole project and how they're doing the outreach. You know, we have a high percentage of Hispanics in the community. And so I'm wondering is how are they making sure that that demographic is being alerted that this is happening? Not only that, they did have a translator, but you know, it's one thing if you're sitting there, all the questions and comments were in English. I didn't hear any in Spanish. So that would be a concern for me. The other thing is you're looking at also we're an economically disadvantaged community. So I'm wondering is how do they factor that in when they're looking at the project, and are they taking all of these concerns into account? I know I did speak with Rhonda. I know she had some questions, so I'm going to let her ask some other ones, but those are a few things I was hoping we could look at, or possibly reach out to Metro and ask them, you know, how are they handling these components?
Mr. Mayor, this is Greg Murphy. Because those questions are informational items, I see no problem answering them. So if either the city manager or the community development director have answers tonight, they can provide them to all three of you. If not, certainly we can get that information and provide it to you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it's Kevin Chun, city manager. In somewhat of a response to Councilmember Suarez's questions, first off, the city staff will be putting together a comment letter for the before the March 15th deadline for the scoping process. And as I mentioned to you before, I will have a draft that I will share with the council before it's sent out. But those specific items that Councilmember Councilmember Suarez brought up related to the social justice component and some of the other items. That is something we'll take a look at, and I'll work with our director, Sean Moore, who is taking the lead in putting together the comment letter. We'll take a look at those components and see what type of comments that we can make. Obviously, we will make comments that are in the best interest of the community and takes into account what their concerns are.
Thank you. I just kind of wanted to bring up, because I've heard a few people saying it, is the way I'm kind of looking at it is there's not a lot. There's, we're kind of on the losing side with either routes that were presented. Torrance, Redondo Beach, more affluent communities, they stand to gain from this extension. The way I see it, our city does not. And then you add the other layers of everything else that we already have to face as a community. And so I just wanted to make sure that that's brought up.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Let's hear from Councilwoman Rhonda Hoffman-Gorman. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor. And some of these questions, I'm going to start off with one that's primarily on, probably one that Sean will probably want to be taking the lead on. I too attended 2 meetings with for the virtual Metro agency scoping. And my very first question is, 2 years ago when Metro met with the residents in Lawndale, they spoke about being above grade and below grade on these 2 possible extensions of the Metro. And all I kept hearing during the scoping meeting was at grade, whether it went down Hawthorne Boulevard or on our current route. Again, they kept using the phrase at grade. I think it's really imperative that the Lawndale resident knows that. On why that was taken away from us, and we're no longer saying that it will be above grade or below grade. A few other concerns that I have, and Greg, go ahead and stop me also if these are things that I shouldn't be asking in this form. But in the meeting on the 24th, the audience was kept in the blind from knowing how many people were actually in attendance of that meeting. I would like Metro to explain that and to tell us why that is, and how come when a speaker was speaking, if we did have a room full of people, why we couldn't see them, and is in the future, could we see them? And that is being brought up because as I sat and listened through those meetings, I felt like the Lawndale residents were few and far between, that the Redondo Beach residents and the Torrance residents all had speakers and people present in the room, but I did not know if I had Lawndale people present. So that was a concern. When we start talking about the advertising that Metro did or did not do, I have some exact questions that I would like taken forward to Metro on, so that our city would know. Things like, what method was used to advertise these meetings? I specifically want to know if mailers were sent to all households within Lawndale. I want to know what publications specifically were used to advertise the meetings, and what form of social media was being used to advertise as well. I also, like Bernadette, am concerned that our second language users weren't represented. So I want to know also what forms of advertising were done within our Spanish-speaking community and even our Vietnamese-speaking community. I feel like these are things in the last several Metro meetings, Metro has had, quote, public comment time, but we haven't received any answers yet. I think it's time that we start looking to Metro to answer some of these things. How many meetings are being held in each area? How is an area defined? What is the minimum requirement for these meetings? Were any held in other languages other than English? How is it determined how much outreach was needed to be done in each area and specifically in Lawndale? How did they measure to know if they met their outreach goal? About another piece of important information, I think, in today's world, I think we need to know currently how many buses are on Lawndale streets every 24 hours. How many pre-pandemic and how many currently? What is the maximum allowed riders on buses, both pre-pandemic as well as currently? And what is the actual numbers of riders using the buses through Lawndale, both pre-pandemic as well as currently? I've also got a problem with the terminology that is being thrown around in these meetings, because unless you're up to date and up on understanding the program or the project, terminology is being used, and the newbies that are just now coming in and trying to get educated on it, this is very difficult, and I believe that Metro needs to back up a second. We've had many people pass away, move out of the area, and people that have purchased new houses, and we need to back up and get them up to speed before we can start having these type of meetings. Our society is changing in many ways and for many reasons. With most of us shopping online, the need to go to the mall or store is diminishing. Heck, many even choose now to have groceries delivered to their home, eliminating that trip to the store. As we have all heard in the past several years while working to try to find a restaurant for the Hawthorne Manhattan Beach project, that was just a couple years ago. We were told the days of sit-down large restaurants are behind us, that millennials are choosing places to pick up their meals or to order and pay and use a table without a wait staff to serve. I believe that this new lifestyle that the pandemic has brought us, more people will be doing just that, picking up their meals or using services such as DoorDash, Uber Eats, and Postmates. Now, add to this, the job market has changed due to the pandemic. Again, employers are figuring out how to use employees from their homes, and that also reduces the number of commuters. I believe Metro has the responsibility to our cities to answer some of these questions and concerns, and my fear is this upcoming March 15th deadline. Not just hold meetings to gather questions, but give us answers. The sad reality is every household in Lawndale will be affected by this project, regardless of if you live south of Manhattan Beach Boulevard. Has Metro done their due diligence in getting Lawndale involved? Property values will be affected. Quality of life in Lawndale are going to be affected. All residents in Lawndale are going to be affected. And yet this past weekend, I stopped and talked to 4 different sets of neighbors that I have spoke to many times in the past and asked them what they knew about the project. And this was the first they had heard anything about it. This project, regardless of which direction, down the existing train corridor or out in Hawthorne Boulevard, will be changing Lawndale well longer than the next 100 years. What has Metro done to engage that Lawndale resident so that they know that this is coming? Again, it's about due diligence. Have they done it? My fear with the pending March 15th deadline for public comment. It's coming too quickly. Is there a way our city can ask Metro to slow down and extend this time? I want to know on the city's behalf if that is a possibility. We need a better way of informing residents. Lawndale stands to lose our largest and probably longest tax revenue source in either of these issues. That's scary to me. That tax money we need for street repairs, for police services, and so much more. A lot is at stake. So those are my, just right off the top of my head, my concerns with this whole project as of right now. Maybe this question is best asked towards Kevin. Would it be possible to set up some type of a committee, a subcommittee of residents, and maybe a couple of us that are on council to work on this as like a task force, trying to communicate with both Metro as well as finding ways in which to get the information out to our residents? That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it's Kevin Chun. In response to Councilmember Hoffman-Gorman's comments, a few things. First off, that this is precisely the reason I'm hoping to get regular meetings with Metro so that we can discuss things like public outreach and other questions that the city council or other community members might have, questions that staff has about the project, just so that we can have a clear understanding of what the project entails. Obviously, there's a little bit of confusion as to what exactly which alternative is going to be selected, and then with each alternative, what are going to be the design features? Is it going to be at grade? Is it going to be above grade? So yeah, we definitely need to have better communication with Metro, and hopefully if we can set up these regular meetings, that's what we can do. As part of that, we will also ask about extending the comment period for the scoping process. Although I will say to that, the scoping process is just one of several opportunities that the city and the community will have to provide input on the project. So after the scoping meeting, there will be additional times during the draft. Once the draft environmental impact report is completed, we will have additional opportunities to provide comments at that point. So please just understand that this isn't our only chance to make comments and then that's it. So we will definitely be able to provide input. But I do think it's a great idea to have a council subcommittee that can work with staff on this, so that we can work directly with Metro and then get the answers that we need on certain things related to the project, and then that information can then be relayed back to the city council. And if the city council would like for the city to work with residents or have some other type of community meetings, we can certainly consider that as well. So I think these are definitely all good ideas, because again, it's just such an important project. And like Councilmember Hoffman-Gorman was saying, this project can potentially really change the character of the city and have lasting impacts for many years, generations perhaps. So yeah, we definitely want to start now and making sure that we're working closely with Metro on this.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Let's hear from Pro Tem Pat Kearney.
I just have a couple questions. I want Kevin and Sean to put in their notes. The original concept of this program was to trench it coming off the overhead off of Manhattan Beach Boulevard. What happened to that? And as you all know, I don't know if you all know, but that strip of land goes from like a funnel, goes from, I think it's 100 feet down to Artesia, I guess it's 75 feet. Down by Artesia, there's a gas line, natural gas line that we have. How are they going to replace that? How are they going to work around that? And then the Artesia artery that goes east and west. How much of an impact, traffic impact, is that going to cause for Lawndale residents, Redondo residents going there when they got to build 2 more tracks over that, plus widen the train track? So these are the questions I would like to have asked from Kevin and Sean in the meeting with Metro. I personally don't trust Metro as far as I can throw them. They say one thing and do another, but with that, I'll leave with that and move it on to you, Robert.
Thank you, sir. And I would add,
Robert, 1 second.
Yes.
I forgot to mention I did attend my the budget subcommittee for the city and also contract cities board of directors meetings. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would add that I too attended 2 of the scoping meeting, Metro scoping meeting. And yeah, you were right. You couldn't tell how many people were participating from Lawndale versus the other cities. On Saturday, it seemed like there was an increase of Lawndale residents, but it seemed like it was that many on Thursday. I think that was Thursday. I do have one of the observations that I brought up on Thursday. I would reiterate that this first started, not when it first started, but at some point when Mayor Garcetti was the chair, it came down to the South Bay Council of Governments for their buy-in. City of Lawndale, in case people are not aware of it, at one point we were the lone, fighters fighting against all the members of the South Bay Council of Governments, except for that small piece of community in Redondo Beach that neighbors us, and that's going to be directly affected by the railroad track. But even their council member at the time was in favor of, of the project. So we were fighting against the Council of Governments pushing or endorsing, I should say, this project. At the time, Mayor Garcetti gave us reassurance that they will look at the option of undergrounding. It goes down the existing right of way down Condon. They would underground, and if not underground, certainly trenching. I didn't hear any talk of trenching. I haven't seen any analysis on trenching. Should alternative going down Condon, that alternative is chosen. So that was one of my concerns, as well as all the other environmental issues. And you're right, there may be also an environmental justice component. We know federal dollars are involved here, and so the federal their environmental review process do require or rather have an element of environmental justice. And so I'm interested in that to see how this project fares in terms of environmental justice. But I was disturbed not to see that we have the option of trenching or undergrounding down Condon. As far as Hawthorne concerned, elevated supposed to be part of the plan as well. I haven't seen any data on the elevation option. As you know, if they go at grade, we were subject to lose a lot of parking, which our business community rely on that parking. Not to mention there's no plans for a station, which means Lawndale once again is going to be a pass-through community, and that's why I describe it as a lose-lose, no matter which option they choose or which alternative they choose. So going down Hawthorne Boulevard, there's no station, and if it's at grade, I can see a lot of adverse effect, on the community. Not to mention some of the property that I understand that they may have to acquire. So I'm concerned about those property owners there on Hoffman Boulevard. I think at the end of the day, this is really a big rush for the Olympics, which is only 2 weeks or so. But we here in the city of Lawndale is going to have to obviously live with this way beyond the Olympics. So I'm not even sure what the ridership consists of. As everyone knows, we pushed a long time ago for more buses, because buses can upscale or downscale based on the demand when you have buses. But once you have this train in, then that's a permanent fixture. Have very low ridership, but you still have a train costing public taxpayers. So that's a concern. And I'm also concerned about the community outreach as well. As everyone may know, I live only a few houses up from the Condon, and I didn't receive any notice, not directly from Metro, I should say. So I'm wondering how they're doing their community outreach. Well, like for us to do it, even though this is their project, obviously, communicate with them so that we are doing our best to do community outreach, our outlets, well, so that our residents are fully aware of these open meetings and the meetings to come. With that, that's all I have. So I will close item 15, Mayor and Council reports. Unless there's any further discussion. Hey, the next regularly scheduled for the Lawndale City Council will be 30 Monday, March 10th, 2021. It's now 7:35 and are hereby adjourned.